What is good, everybody, man? Welcome in, man. I know everyone is live, man. If you're covering HBCU SWAC football, you're probably live right now, man. So shout out to everyone catching the replay as well, man. But me and Coach promised this live stream, and we usually do Wednesday nights, but there's no better night than tonight, man. Coach, how you doing, man?
Man, I'm good. How are you? How was your trip?
Oh man, good. I'm sure you can hear it in my voice, man. I'm a little like hoarse tonight because I feel like I've been doing nothing but talking for 2 weeks with all these media days, man. I got one more on Thursday, and I can finally like wrap it up till the season.
Where you heading on Thursday?
Greenville, South Carolina for SoCon Media Day.
Okay, okay. I thought
Yep.
the hoarseness was from road rage or something.
Listen, the hoarseness was from me vouching for two players that should have won some awards today, but we'll get into that very shortly, man. But listen, I've spent all day, guys. SWAC Media Day. We already have 5 coaches interviews out, man. I believe TC Taylor, Eric Dooley, Willie Simmons, Kendrick Wade, and Eddie Robinson Jr. already released. More coming tomorrow, along with player interviews, man. So check all those out, man. Make sure to like all the videos, comment your thoughts, and make sure to hit the like button on this stream and subscribe to the channel, man. But we have a lot to talk about, man. SWAC Media that it was today. We got the preseason rankings, coach. We got SWAC offensive and defensive player of the years. We got the all conference teams, and we had a lot of coaches. I'll be honest with you, coach. If there I don't know if there's a single coach out there right now that doesn't think they can win the SWAC right now.
Hey, it goes back to our last show. Uh, when we're talking reality, in every conference, there's certain teams that and then there's certain teams that know. But that's what this time is for: enthusiasm, optimism, um, and wishful thinking. I'll leave it at that. Now I'm playing, but off season, man, you're around your team, you fall in love with those guys, you see good things, and everybody has that in mind. That's what it's about.
Man, I love it, man. Shout out to David, member of the channel, man. Shout out to my guy Bryce from the crowded booth, man. Looking forward to catching up with you soon. But coach, SWAC predicted order of finish. Now, last year they got it right. They did have Southern number one. If I'm not mistaken, they had Jackson number one as well. But 2 years ago, it was major misses on both sides of the division. So there's a lot of variability in how these predicted order of finishes go. Now, according to all knowledge I have, most of the voting is done by SIDs and head coaches, and there might be some auxiliary voters shoved in there that I'm not sure the identity of. But coach, FAMU, big favorite to win the East this year. 16 first place votes, 116 total points. Southern, the favorite in the West, with 13 first place votes, but they lead all teams, coach. I thought this was interesting with 122 total points, which would suggest that right now the people who voted in this poll would think that Southern is going to be the SWAC champions this upcoming season. Was there anything that surprised you with this predicted order of finish?
We'll start in the East. For me with the East, we talked about this before. It was going to be a coin flip for 1 and 2, and I think we actually had 3 and 4 right, and that one's pretty close. I think we were talking before we went live, man. Somebody posted it, and I wish I could find it. That and these are not my words, but somebody posted it and said that since Jerry Rice left Valley, this is the first time they haven't been picked in the last spot. They got first place votes. So that to me tells me that everyone thinks the East is pretty even. Getting down to the West, as we talked, I think they got us a little too high. I think they probably should have had us in the 4 or 5 hole, but we'll take where we're at. And it goes back, like you said, 3 years ago. Yeah, we'll take that. We'll take that and play with it. But for Southern to get to be the all points leader, that's saying a lot, man. That's saying a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, of course, the first place vote distribution is interesting. Now, with head coaches SIDs being a little bit biased, obviously, this is the artifact you get from that. But if we're keeping it real, like if we're going to keep it realistic, I expected to see a large distribution of first place votes throughout the West. Me and you talked. There's 5 teams who, depending on what the quarterback looks like, depending on what certain factors fall certain ways throughout the season, could make the SWAC championship. And I'm okay with the distribution of people with the unknown with the West. But the East was interesting. I really did think you were going to have a large majority of first place votes for that Jackson State FAMU, whoever ended up being number one, and you might have a few thrown on Alabama State. But I was not expecting Alabama A&M or Valley to take away some of those first place votes, and I wonder if people being a little bit biased kind of increased the margin that this poll suggests that FAMU has on the rest of the East.
And, I think that goes back to what you said earlier. Everybody feeling like hey, man, so there's a chance. And I think that came into play there. But the one thing that I do find interesting when we're talking about the SWAC West, the team that they have in the 5-hole, I did not expect them to be in the 5-hole. I honestly expected them to be in the 2-hole, being realistic. No worse than 3. So to see that, that's surprising to me.
Yeah, with PV, so this is what confuses me, because I think last year, if I'm not mistaken, they were voted really high, even with the coaching change, and everyone was kind of wondering why everyone was believing in PV with all this new staff, new coaching, things like that.
Had a lot of players at the portal.
Yeah, this year they return a lot of talent. They have a returning coach who is 1 win away from a SWAC championship. Man, like it seems I don't know what, either they became very high or buying into the hype of some other teams, or I wonder if they saw something in PV where they're like, okay, we think they're going to fall off because they upgraded at running back. They're one of the only teams in the West with a returning quarterback coming in Trayvon Conley. They return a lot of pieces on the defensive side of the football. Their staff doesn't have a lot of their staff has continuity going into next year. So I'm very curious in terms of the voting, what people are scared about PV right now. Now, do I think they're going to win the West? Me personally, no. But man, 5th seems like a steep drop from being 1 game away against Valley from facing Jackson in Jackson for the SWAC championship last year.
Yeah, that's what I say. The 5-hole, I did not see that. Again, I could have had them at 1, 2, 3, 4 at worst. But I think when we're talking about the West, I think you put it in a brown paper bag, you shake it up. Maybe with the exception of one that is kind of unknown, you kind of put it up there how you want to put it up there, and I think you would have been okay. The surprising thing, again, I just go back to the total points. When you're talking about 122 points, all the way till 33 points, and then, like you said up top, when you're talking about the total first place votes, I expected more total first place votes for the team up the street than 2. I really did, just because. But hey, they know something we don't, I guess, and we'll pin this and we'll revisit this in December.
Yeah, and D, I believe it's the coaches and SIDs. Might be some like conference office officials who vote in it too. But Coach, I want to put a pin in it right now. But me and you both talked before the show, and we'll get through the all-conference SWAC Player of the Year awards before we get into this. But I think we both talked about a strong reason that we might not see more than 2 first-place votes in that team in Jackson, Mississippi. And yes, we'll get into that later in the show, guys. So stay tuned for that, because we're going to really break that down. But, Coach, this is what they came for. I usually push the big topics to the back end of the show, man, but I couldn't wait. And I've been talking about this all day, man. I had some people come up to me today asking me when this live stream is, including Bubba, man. I got to send you the link, man. I forgot to do that, but this is ridiculous. At the end of the day, man, the rankings, I can maybe reason with a little bit. This is just getting out of hand at some point. And I want to say this, Coach, before I throw it to you. I did an interview today, and I was asked about this. And yes, preseason player of the years, preseason rankings, at the end of the day, don't make anything happen in the fall. But unless you've played and you've woken up at 4 a.m. every day for those early morning workouts, you've set out in that Lorman sun, man, and worked out and dealt with the humidity, dealt with everything you have to deal with being a student athlete. This is important to the student athletes because this is what you fight for at the end of the day, is to be recognized on the national level. And so I don't want to, the people who say this doesn't matter are the people who I really don't believe have ever played organized sports before. And I really question their competitiveness, because you could say it doesn't matter. You could say, yeah, you're right, it doesn't win you championships, but it's still, this is what these kids have fought for. And especially when you got a guy in Colton Adams who has been, let's just be honest, he's been overlooked for multiple seasons now. And it's just like this repeat thing for him. Coach, I texted you this morning about this, and when we had a whole conversation, your first thoughts when you see Jeremy Musa from FAMU, quarterback, as the preseason offensive player of the year, and Sundiata Anderson, Grambling State edge rusher, as the defensive player of the year?
When we talked about this morning, I thought you were playing. I was like, there's no way. And we've talked about this in the past as well. And I'm like, there's two people that I would say I thought were shoo-ins. The kid that plays here, and then, of course, the kid who should have been the defensive player of the year last year. I would have been really good with either or making it. But for neither of those kids to make it, I want to know what went into it. Again, not knocking the kids that are on the list, but I want to know what went into it to put the kid at FAM over the kid at our place, the kid at Grambling over the kid at Alabama State. I would like to know those factors. You know, what was the final nod on saying, yeah, stretch that, add him, stretch that, add him? Because it just doesn't make sense. If you go back and you look at the body of work from both of those kids that didn't make the list compared to the kids that made the list, again, I don't want to say apples to oranges, because that's such a different deal. But that's tangerines to oranges to me. You know, that just doesn't, one's big. I don't know. I thought you were playing, and then when it came out, I'm like, wow, that actually happened. Like, neither one of those kids made the list.
Yeah, I mean, I want to say this. I think I can rationalize Sundiata more than I can Musa. And here's why: because for me, Sundiata was an FCS All-American as well. So I he's a great player, and I do have it on good authority. He's the third highest graded FCS prospect coming out in this draft class. So the talent's undeniable. It's just, for me, as great as Sundiata is, I wanted to say that way it wasn't seem like I was tearing down Sundiata, because he is SWAC Defensive Player of the Year potential. That's his caliber, and he's an NFL prospect, and he's great. But it's just, for Bubba, what else do you want him to do? At the end of the day, Coach, he led the FCS in tackles per game. He had
triple digits.
Yeah, over 120 total tackles. He had double-digit tackles for loss, only half a tackle of loss less than Sundiata Anderson, who plays edge rusher, who should be getting more tackles for loss than a middle linebacker. And he has pass breakups, he has interceptions, he has forced fumbles. What else do you want him to do? And he only did that in 10 games because he missed a game where it could have been a stat padding game for him. He missed one of the stat padding games and still led the country in tackles per game. And I want to put it in perspective because I had a conversation with someone at SWAC Media today, and they said the reason that they thought that Sundiata should have got it is because just because a guy has a high volume number of tackles doesn't mean that he's a great player. And I'm like, I get you, because that's true. There are some guys who have a lot of who have a lot of tackles that haven't necessarily earned them, right? They're just in the right place, right time. They are on a bad team. They're the only guy. I want to put this in perspective. Colton Adams played on arguably a top 2 defense in the SWAC last year, easily top 3. That's without question, but you can argue top 2. He had Brandon Gaddy. He had the defensive end, I'm blanking on his name, Nelson Jordan. It wasn't like it was him just going, having to make the plays because he's playing with a bunch of bums. Coach, this is what sold me. I got to see him play in person because when I'm doing my FCS All-American list, I like to go back and watch film. I went back and watched the Jackson game that I was at. That 18 tackle performance against Jackson arguably was one of the most impressive performances in the entire SWAC last season for a defensive player. That kid was everywhere, Coach. I'm talking about, it looked like they had 3 Bubba Adams out there, and he was playing all 3 linebacker spots. Like, they couldn't get away from him. And I agree with the sentiment that, yes, just because you have a lot of tackles, it can't just be a stat-based award. That's fine. The impact that he had on Alabama State is undeniable, and the film does not lie. The analytics don't lie. My question, and this is the same for Jarvian, and we're going to get there, is what else does this kid have to do? Does he have to go get 150 tackles? Does he have to get 200 tackles? Like, what is the standard here to get SWAC Defensive Player of the Year for a kid who had double-digit tackle for loss, who had over 120 tackles, who was a coach? I just want to put this in perspective. Sundiata was an FCS All-American for us preseason. Bubba was an FCS All-American on like 3 different publications.
Yeah.
What else does this kid have to do?
Yeah. And when they tell you it's not solely about stats, it goes back to me and you having a conversation about MVP. Like, okay, if it's not about stats, what exactly is it about? Because one kid played on a better team according to win-losses. One kid had more tackles, but you're saying that's not a part of the whole equation. Then what are we talking? I mean, what are we talking about? He's at class on time every day. He maxes out at this. What goes into it? And I get it. It's just a preseason award. But like you said, that kid is now looking like, what else? What do I have to do? And that's bad for us because we have to play him. And now he's got that pin up on his walls in his locker room. As they say, thanks a lot, voters, for getting this guy riled up. But kid had over 100 tackles, man. And was not the only player on the defense. Did more things than just A to B gap. I mean, if you go back, like you said, you go back and you look at him. I mean, he can get from sideline to sideline. He can get in zone coverage. He can definitely blitz. But he is a kid that plays at the second level with guys in front of him and guys coming at him, and he's still able to get over 100 tackles. I just don't know how we don't have a preseason defensive player of the year at worst.
Yeah, no, I would have been fine with that. I would have been, if it was co-defensive player of the year, Sundiata and Bubba, fine with me. Because I told you on our last show, Sundiata was my number 2 choice. Like, yes. I'm good. I'm good with that. I love Sundiata. I've talked to him. That's my dude. He's going to be in the NFL one day. But, man, what else does Bubba have to do? And I want to get to Paris. That's why I said one of them, because Aubrey against Campbell was up there too. I agree. But before we get to Jarvian, man, if I'm Alabama State today, I'm pissed at the SWAC. Because, let's just look over the past, 2-3 years. The amount of snubs that Alabama State can write about and be mad about, they have a whole court case to make against the SWAC at this point, man. Take it to court, get a lawyer, because you got Adrian Maddox, who got screwed out of the freshman of the year last season with Kevin Coleman. Hell, Adrian Maddox wasn't even first team all SWAC this preseason, which is just ignorant. Then you've got Nelson Jordan, who led the SWAC in sacks last year, who wasn't even on the all SWAC team. Not first, not second, not third. He didn't even get the all SWAC honors and led the entire conference in sacks. What do we have to do here? Like, what are we doing?
I don't get that one. And that wasn't a preseason war. You know, the season's over. And to me, you go through that and you're like, okay, this kid had 15 sacks. The next closest kid is at 9. Okay, that kid's on one side, that kid's on the other side. You know, I don't know how you miss that. And okay, we've got to take personal feelings out of it if it's totally just the coaches that are voting. If it's just the SIDs that are voting, we got to take the feelings out of it, and we got to look at what's on paper, what's the black and white. You know, the team up the street, you know, that's heated rival, no doubt. But if a kid does work and is undeniable on the paper, I mean, I can't say, no, the kid from up the street doesn't make it because I don't like them. Let's vote the kid from Florida. I mean, that just doesn't jive. That brings a what's the word I'm looking for? That brings a stench that the credibility is no longer there with the first team, the second team, when you do things like that, to me.
Yeah, I mean, I talked to Bubba today, Coach. This might be the most terrifying thing. Me and him talked for probably 20, 30 minutes today, and he was like, I heard it. He was like, I don't know what I have to do, but he was like, it was noted. So now you got this kid who just put up 120 total tackles, like 12 and a half tackles for loss, and now he's pissed off at the world because no one's respecting him.
Bubba, we respect you, dog. We know who you are. We respect you, dog.
Oh, man. I don't know. And John, this is a good question. Bama State does have 2 D2 opponents usually each year. I will say that shouldn't hurt Bubba because FAMU plays a D2 team every year as well. And this year, they're playing a D2 team and a team that the NCAA doesn't even recognize. So if Bubba gets hurt by it, FAMU better not have anybody on that team as well.
And, you know, the opinion that I have on that as well is, again, solely my opinion, not those of Bluebloods, but you still got to go out there and make those tackles. And if it gets to a point to where it should, as far as D2, whatever gets out of hand, you know, he's not playing late in the ball game anyway. Mm-hmm. You know, so not much is done past halftime in that situation if they're handling business, if they're doing what they need to do. But he still has to go out there and make those tackles. The other team is not just going to pull the Brett Favre and go run at him and lay down and let him tag him for the tackle. You know, they're trying to make plays as well. But it's on the schedule. And if that is going to be the case, then like you said, the conference needs to make that known in the beginning that those stats won't be counted.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the only way you do that. If you're going to hurt me by doing it and we play it, my AD schedules it, we have to play it, and it's going to hurt me. Hey, let's just take those games out of the context when we're talking about voting for awards.
Yeah, I'm with you. And if it's going to hurt you and the conference doesn't like them, how about we stop scheduling them? Why don't we put out a mandate that instead of being able to schedule Lincoln, which at the end of the day, IMG would beat by 45, why don't we go ahead and schedule a Sanford, a Mercer, a Chattanooga, a Sanford, a North Alabama, or someone that's FCS in the footprint, a Northwestern State, a McNeese. I mean, there's options here other than inviting a team from California that literally this hotel staff downstairs could probably beat if they laced up in the parking lot. It's getting outrageous, man. A shout out to Mr. Body, man. Got to talk to Andrew today. You already know that interview's coming tomorrow. But, Coach, let's get to Jarvian because I got to talk to him today too. And listen, I'm going to say this because I've been getting this a lot, and there's a lot of people that predicted this. Yes, it's a quarterback award per se. Like, yes, quarterbacks get the benefit of the doubt. But if that's going to be, if that's your only argument for why Musa deserves this award, then that right there proves he doesn't deserve it. If the only thing you can give me is that he's a quarterback and he may be the best returning quarterback in the SWAC, and that's the only reason. You don't talk about his game, you don't talk about his stats, you don't talk about his leadership, you don't have any redeeming qualities to really hang this debate on when we're debating Jarvian versus Musa. And all you could say is, well, Musa's a quarterback of the favorite team, and he's the only one coming back that wasn't hurt or has produced okay. I mean, man, like at the end, like to me, there's no reason. Like it's just ridiculous. I mean, this goes back to what I said with Bubba. What does a running back have to do to earn any respect? Like Jarvian literally couldn't have done anything more than what he did last season. 1,200 plus yards, averaging damn near 6 yards a carry, double-digit touchdowns on NFL draft boards, FCS All-American. To me, this looks terrible in the conference because of this, Coach. I want to get your opinion. Because Sundiata and Bubba were both FCS All-Americans. So it is what it is. It's a wash there. But what does it look like on the conference where Jarvian's getting FCS All-American honors, FCS All-American looks, and you are too lazy in your voting to name that guy the Offensive Player of the Year for your conference? What does that make the conference look like?
Again, it goes back to what I just said earlier about the credibility. Again, let me put this disclaimer out here. It's nothing against that kid who got the preseason award. Nothing against him. But if we're giving awards for the Offensive Player of the Year, and you go through and you look at whatever said criteria is, right? How does he not get it? Again, this is one of those ones where if it's still a little salty about it, but I can deal with it because of the history. These awards are what you've done, past work, and what we're projecting your body of work to be this year. Again, week in, week out, the kid here did what he had to do and did it well. Week in, week out, okay, that kid, they ran off 9 games in a row or whatever. Some of those things were subpar. Some were, on par. Some were above. But again, like we talked about, tell me what goes into the decision. And if it's the decision of we're going to go with who we say the favorite is, fine. Then make that announcement so that other kids don't have to think or get there and sit there and be like, okay, yeah, they get ready to get up out their seat and then they call somebody else's name kind of thing. I just think the credibility is weakened when we do things like this, just because when we're talking about outside entities naming kids to All-American teams, preseason All-American teams, and then they don't make our All-American teams. That just doesn't that don't make sense to me. Like, what's the different check marks? What's the different checklist? What are they using and what are we using?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to put this in perspective because I keep hearing it's a quarterback award. The Big Sky had a wide receiver win their preseason Offensive Player of the Year.
That kid's pretty nice.
Hayden's a dog. Now, the UAC hasn't announced, but guess what? In the SoCon tomorrow, there's going to be a conversation. I mean, it'll probably be hires, but that kid's a first-team FCS All-American. It is what it is. The MVFC, probably not going to be a quarterback. Just going to throw that out there. Probably going to be Isaiah Davis or someone like that.
But the kid that you just talked about, the quarterback has to throw it to the receiver, right? Yep. So if we're saying this is a quarterback type award, then why didn't they? Come on, man.
Exactly. I mean, so it doesn't have to be a quarterback award. The reason it's a quarterback award is because the voters are lazy and the voters are I'm not going to call out the voters in like any personal things. I don't know who exactly they are. I mean, the SIDs and head coaches I do, but outside of that, But I mean, I'm just looking at Jarvian, man. In an out of conference game, a big out of conference FCS game, he rushes for 200 yards and a touchdown, and then comes back in conference play, puts up 304 touchdowns, and then a big game against Texas Southern, 134 and a touchdown, and then he finishes the season, coach, with 3 consecutive games of 100 yards with a touchdown rushing, including against a top 10 run defense in the country in Jackson State. In a crucial game, he delivers where I don't think Jackson gave up 100 yards rushing to any running back all season long except for Jarvian Howard. And when you go look at what Musa did against that defense,
I mean, I don't have to say it, but it's already been said. Like, again, what are we going off of? It was the easy pick, like you said, because, and I said the easy pick because it could have very well been the team that they're picked to finish above. Let's just be honest, that has gotten a lot of preseason hype and deservingly, but that shouldn't factor into preseason awards.
No, I mean, and I'm trying to find out who was named the because I listen, man, I've been at SWAC Media Day all day, so I've even got to look who the CAA voted as Offensive Player of the Year, because there's a good chance that it also was not a quarterback to win that award. So I just want to see who they actually voted preseason Player of the Year on this one. I'm trying to find it. Jaden Sheridan. Guess what, Coach? Running back.
I say not a quarterback.
Jaden Sheridan, running back, was voted the CAA Offensive Player of the Year. There's some pretty good quarterbacks in the CAA, don't you think, Coach?
Yeah, just a few.
I'll say, yeah, just a few. I mean, so the fact that other conferences can see when running backs do enough to get there, I mean, it's just, again, I go back to the question of, Coach, what do we need from Jarvian to break through that glass ceiling of being a running back and this always being a quarterback award?
I mean, again, they said the president, I guess, with that last year, the kid that was, the former quarterback of the team up the street. I mean, he had a great year, but if we're talking about the Offensive Player of the Year, week in, week out, Jarvian had a case for that then, as well. But, the shiny award goes to the quarterback. And again, if that's what you're saying, just make it a quarterback award. Hey, preseason quarterback of the year type thing, if that's what we're doing. Because numbers, it just doesn't add up. It doesn't jive.
That's what I'm saying. Listen, if we're just giving it exclusively to quarterbacks, just name it that. It will make everyone's life easier. Be like, who's the best returning quarterback in the SWAC each year, and just like leave it at that. And then at the end of the season, we can vote on who,
and nobody will be mad.
Yeah, who's the best quarterback in the league at the end of the year? I mean, because you had Shador the past 2 years, you had how many times did Akil win it in a row? Twice.
Something like that, yeah.
And then you had Felix in 2019?
Yep.
So who was the last running back to win Offensive Player of the Year?
Wow.
I'm trying to think. Put it in the chat if you know. I'm trying to think who was the last running back to.
Who's the last non-quarterback?
Because I know in the MEAC it was Cohen, wasn't it? Tariq Cohen?
Tariq, yeah.
Tariq Cohen won it for the MEAC, if I'm not mistaken.
Who was the last non-quarterback, though? Just period in the conference. Like I said, Noah won it. Felix won it.
Tiller's 2016 preseason.
Huh.
Yeah, so Tillery. It was Tillery from
running back from Southern.
Yep. Yeah. And he was, and someone said he was co-player of the year as well. Yeah, because after Tillery, that's when Kincaid was. I mean, you couldn't take it away from Kincaid. That's cool. I get that. I get that.
Yeah, he did what he did 2 years in a row. He did what he did.
So it was Tillery. Man, think about that. Tillery. I mean, oh yeah, and they said Alabama State. Who was the running back in 2015?
That the kid transferred from Georgia.
Yeah, Crowell, Isaiah Crowell, right?
Was that him?
I want to say. I want to say something. I want to look it up on my phone because I'm in this hotel Wi-Fi. Because I want to do something.
No, I don't think that was him. He was a few years ahead of that. I want to say maybe 13 or something like that. Yeah, he had to be 13.
Yeah, let's see. Hang on. 2015.
John Gibbs won it in 14, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Everyone in the chat's like, I think it's Crowell. I think it's not.
No, I think he was 13, 2013.
Okay. Hang on. I got it right here. So the offensive player of the year in 2015 was Jonathan Williams from Grambling. Let's see. I'm trying to find. I want to compare something because I'm trying to find Tillery's stats from that last season at Southern where he won Offensive Player of the Year compared to
Jarvian.
Yeah, I don't know where I see. That's crazy though that he rushed for as many yards as he did.
Tilly was a guy. He was a workhorse. He was a dude.
Let's see. Okay, I got him now here. And that's another thing. I had a conversation, Coach, with someone. We got to get better at having stats available for certain players.
Yeah, I agree. In a timely manner.
Yeah, okay, hang on. I found his all SWAC. Okay, yeah, so he rushed for more yards than Jarvian, but I believe they had the same number of touchdowns. Man, he rushed for 1,600 yards.
Yeah, he was a dude.
That's a dude right there. But but they both had 12, 13 rushing touchdowns. So so they both get in the end zone at the same time. But man, at the end of the day,
football was different then.
Yeah, but this has got to stop though.
Yeah, no doubt.
This has to stop. We got to give the awards to the right people because at the end of the day, man, these guys have worked their asses off, man, to deserve it.
Yeah, they deserve it. They deserve to be able to have that to show 10 years from now. They deserve to have that on their resume. I don't think the NFL scouts that are calling now are going to be any less interested in him, but that's still something nice to put in his player resume, in his bio.
Yeah.
And he, like you said, he earned it. He earned it.
Man,
Not saying this kid didn't, but
I'm saying one of them didn't, but the other one, he earned it. It could have been a co, but both of the guys, man, I just, oh God, we got to get the voting correct too. I don't know if how to change it because like SoCon, we get to vote on certain things, and so does Big Sky and some of the other conferences. We got to find a way to like even out the bias in voting, whether it's only national publications that aren't tied to a school or get an even number of people that from each school to vote or something like that. We got to find a way to even out the voting because
with
this is
some knowledge.
Hey, can we come up with like a football IQ test or something? Like they got to take like what's the NFL test? Everyone's got to take the
Wonderlic.
You got to take the Wonderlic, and if you don't get a certain score, you can't vote.
Hey, because we don't need you going to get Miss Jane from accounting, and then she just checks off everything from our university. But we need to have somebody that has some knowledge of football and understanding what they're doing. Just like when they talk about the Heisman voting, West Coast bias, East Coast bias, or whatever. We don't have that issue, so you should be able to go and look at film, and you ain't got to go watch the whole season. Pull up numbers. Oh, man, he ran for 200 yards in this game. Let me look at this game. All right. Oh, he did this in this game. Let me look at him in this game. It's an easy deal. You have to put a little time in it, but it's an easy deal. That's like the all-conference list at the end of the year. There's some kids that make that list, nothing against them, but you're like, what? Did we just run out of time and we just start grabbing names, that kind of thing. But you have to put time in it. And like you said, the SIDs have got to do, their end of the job, their end of the deal with the stats, easily accessible. But if I don't play Alabama A&M, I've got to go back and look at Alabama A&M if they have people on the list to do it the right way. I think that's only fair. I don't just not vote for them because we didn't play them. There's kids that deserve it. We didn't play them. I don't know. I didn't see him live. I got to go back and look at something to base a vote off of. So it takes a little time, but it's doable.
So, Coach, let me get your opinion. We're going way off track here because now we got a whole other topic. But I got to ask because I've had this debate in the chat, and it was a little bit, I would say, split. I was very shocked because this goes into even top 25 voting. I said there's a reason that let's look at the FBS level, Power 5. There's a reason why the coaches poll is a joke at that level compared to like the main AP or media poll. And then even of course we got the college football playoff poll, which ultimately is the end all be all. But the FCS is the only level that the coaches poll is put on ESPN, is really, I guess, talked about a lot. I've been of the mindset, and this is because now I've gotten to know a lot of coaches, and I know kind of behind the scenes on how that poll works. Is it time to get rid of the coaches poll?
Most definitely.
You've heard it from the coach himself. People were saying I was crazy. Some people in the chat, man, if people knew the insanity that was being voted on the FCS top 25 that I've heard, man, people would lose their minds.
Most definitely. There's just so much going into a week of preparation for a game that a lot of times, coaches don't have time to sit and do the bare minimum of research to make an informed pick, so to speak. And then I think you get that at that point, you get the deal of where people just kind of check who they know, or not vote at all, or hand it off to somebody. Hey, place this for me and get this done, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, I think you've got to go about it a different way.
Now, I do want to say that there's no poll that's going to be perfect. I want to throw that out there. Like, I'm not saying that there's another poll but I do think that a national media poll is always more accurate than a coach's poll. And I think there's like this perception that because coaches know football more, that it's more accurate. But it's just like, man, it would be if they just got to sit down like we do, watch the film, watch games all day, break down players. Like, yeah, it'd probably be super accurate. But bro, you think we'll throw McNair into this. Do you think Fred McNair, after he just played McNeese and he's preparing for PV in week 4, that he's going to watch film to vote in the FCS top 25? There is zero shot.
Absolutely.
He doesn't care. And just to give you perspective, this is what brought it up. St. Thomas, who, for those who don't know, I've brought up on the show a few times, went from D3 to FCS recently. One of the only schools to do that. They were getting top 20, top 15 votes last season for being with one loss. And since they've moved to FCS, they have lost by double digits to every single scholarship school they have played on their schedule. And they were getting top 15 votes because they were 10-1 in the coaches poll.
Right. You go and you look at the score, and that's what you go by. They won. And you kind of go from there. I mean, case in point, and don't take this the wrong way, Southern put up a gazillion points versus the one school.
Yeah.
Somebody that didn't watch that game would be like, oh, man, okay, yeah, they deserve voting that thing. They putting up some points or whatever, not realizing, I didn't even look to see who they played. I just saw that they scored 80 points, that kind of thing. That happens, so I think it's time to figure it out. They've done it at the higher level because you've had, coaches come out and say that, by the time USC plays, I mean, we're in bed, whatever. And I think that was, weighed in as well. And I think it's still prevalent at this level. A lot of times coaches just don't have time.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I just wanted to get your thoughts on that. But let's run through this, man. We'll try to cut this off in an hour, man. We got all conference teams for the conference, man. I'm gonna give a little bit of my thoughts. So I'm releasing Bluebloods released their own for the publication, so I don't want to give away anything I'm picking. But I think looking at this, coach, first team offense, we'll take it. First team offense, first team defense, second team. Any surprises here on the first team offense for you?
Yeah, the one kid we talked about that's not in one of those spots, down toward the bottom there, the receiver position. Again, I don't want to give away the rest of it, but I don't know what we're looking at when we're doing those things, when we're pulling those names together and putting them on a sheet and circling and checking. But I'm okay with that. I'm okay with, other than him not being on the list, I'm okay with it.
I think Monterio's, I'll just break that, is on ours. He's not first team, which kind of gives it away on which team he's on. But the one I was surprised about, Shareed, I can handle. I don't think that's crazy. But, man, Derek Morton, first team? We'll have a conversation about that. Just personally, I don't think, for me, the consensus first team wide receiver coming into the year should be Lyndon Rash. In my opinion, for Grambling. Man, that kid can ball.
No doubt.
That kid is legit. There's no reason he shouldn't be first team all SWAC. And especially because he was putting up numbers performing with terrible quarterback play.
4 different guys.
Yeah, I mean, it's just atrocious. And when you look at what Derek was doing with, with Andrew, Andrew was a huge upgrade over any quarterback that Grambling had on the roster last year. And then you got Shareed doing it with Musa, who's also a much better quarterback than any quarterback on Grambling's roster last season. So I think Rash is the real deal. And I think that would be the one change is I don't mind Derek Morton being an all-conference guy, but I don't think he's first team. And another thing, Coach, let me run this by you. To me, they don't have enough receivers on each team. In today's age of college football and the spread, you have to have at least 3 all-conference wide receivers on each team because that's how many wide receivers teams are using nowadays.
That's what everybody usually plays with, at least 3. There's at least 3 people on the field at the receiver spot. So I'm with you. That needs to be adjusted. And I know they try to keep it at 11. I guess that's the rationale. But very few teams are playing with two running backs consistently. There's at least 3, if not 4 receivers on the field at all times.
Yeah, I don't mind 2 running backs. I'll have 2 running backs on ours, but man, for some conferences, we'll put 4 wide receivers on there.
And it's not like they're going to actually play. So I mean, you could do it. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Like you're not going to get a penalty, but man, defense, coach, initial thoughts on first team all SWAC defense.
I felt like this is all right, but I felt like, again, we're talking about numbers, and when you're talking about numbers, we have a kid that was right at 100 tackles, not knocking any other kid on the list, but I felt like that kid was just as good as any of these guys on the list. And a DB, our corner, Andrew Smith, I thought would get an opportunity from his body of work toward the end of the year from the last 5 games, the way he picked it up. I thought he would be in consideration for for a spot as well. And it's not just us. But after we finish this, I'll make my point, and I think you know what the point is because we kind of talked about it.
Yeah, there's some names missing. Again, 4 linebackers should be on here. Listen, with the development of edge rushers and some of those guys being classified as linebackers, you got to have 4 linebackers on all conference, all American teams now. That's 1. 2, you need 5 DBs. With the emergence of 3-3-5s, 4-2-5s, these hybrid defenses, you have to have 5 defensive backs. You can't account because the thing that bothers me, I try to do my best for my publication, but I don't always do it, and it's hard sometimes. Try to get 2 corners, 3 safeties, 3 corners, 2 safeties. You can't just have a bunch of corners on there and no safeties. I think when I look at the DB, I don't hate any of the DB selections, but Adrian Maddox, I don't care who you take off. Adrian Maddox is a first-team selection.
Got it. Again, like we've been saying the whole time, I mean, you're talking about what constitutes a vote to get on the first team. Numbers, tackles, passes defended, INTs, what goes into it? Or are we just pulling names, the sexy teams, starters, that kind of thing? And if that is, but, let it be known.
Yeah. And I mean, the only other person there's a person on mine, and I have different rule. Like, listen, I sit down with some of the people I collaborate with, and we make our own rules because I know the SWAC doesn't allow transfers. For us, though, we allow transfers that played at the FCS level. We do not allow FBS to FCS transfers because they haven't played on this level. But if you're playing at, let's say, McNeese State and you transfer to Tennessee State, you're eligible to be on the all-conference team. Because if like Corian Harris last year from McNeese to Southern, he would have been eligible for us, but he's not eligible for the SWAC because he hasn't played in the conference. The conference doesn't do transfers. Asayas Guthrie, in my opinion, I think is first team all conference caliber, but I understand that it would be against the conference rules to put him on here. I'll just say that.
And I get it. Like you said, across levels. I mean, Delaware State, MEAC, SWAC, cross levels.
That's comparable.
State. Yeah, pretty much. Coming from Penn State to here, I understand that you got to put something in between the lines before you can make the teams. I'm good with that. And then just kind of make your point with the defensive back, 2 corners, 2 safeties, a nickel, however you want to put it. That's what everybody plays with now. There's 5 guys back in that back now on that back end. And, up front, like you said, there's 3 guys with their hand on the ground. There's guys standing up on the edge rusher, linebacker, whatever you want to call him. But you got to extend it by 1 or 2, I would think, just to fit what each offense and what each defense is doing nowadays in football.
Yeah, it just shows. I mean, it's not just a SWAC. I want to put this out there. There are a lot of conferences that are behind the times on how to continuously upgrade because it's tough because you see the linebacker position. How do you compare a guy like John Pius to a guy like Colton Adams when they're listed at the same position? Because John Pius is a stand-up edge rusher for William & Mary who had damn near 20 stacks and like 20-something tackles for loss, and you're comparing him to a Mike. But to the average fan, they're both listed at linebackers. But if you watch the film and you really study these guys, they're both listed as linebackers, but they play 2 totally different positions at the end of the day. So like that's why I think you have to expand a little bit in my opinion, because you have to, because I was talking about this today, Coach, and I said that football is becoming a lot like the NBA basketball, where it's becoming almost not positionless, where a D tackle can play safety. But when you take the individual position groups, the defensive line is kind of positionless. You have a guys who can play the 3, the 1, can step out to the 5. You have your edge rushers who could also play Mike sometimes. They can play Will, can play Sam. They can play all these different linebacker positions. They could be the apex guy in coverage. And then you got in the secondary, man, good God, it could be positionless because you can have guys who can play slot corner, play boundary corner, play the nickel, play the deep safety, play in the box as a safety. I think I don't know how you feel about it, but for me, that's why you have to kind of expand the amount of slots you have, is because with football, it's becoming so much like basketball where there's really not true positions when you go into individualized personnel groups.
You're right. And even when you change defenses, that 3 tech, when you get out of your 4-man front and you go to your 3, he now becomes your 5, essentially your defensive end. So yeah, you hit it on the head. The game itself is a little different. And again, it's not like you're going to put these guys in between the lines and play against anybody. So, expand it just a little bit. I'm not saying get crazy, but, add 1 or 2, maybe 3 tops. That way you fit everybody in it. Like you said, the linebacker position has changed. There's a guy that used to be a defensive end that they call linebacker now, but he's at the line of scrimmage. The Mike is playing behind the line of scrimmage at depth, and one is getting a chance to rush the passer continuously, pressure the ball every play. The other one is reading and sight. So the comparison, like you said, doesn't match up. And it makes it tough for one, I think, stat-wise compared to the other one when you're looking at different stats and different things.
Yeah, I mean, because like for me, I feel like defensive back is one of the hardest positions to, excuse me, one of the hardest positions to evaluate in terms of all conference, all American, because man, stats, they're meaningless. I mean, really and truly. I mean, look, you can have a guy with 7 picks, but he might be giving up bombs week in and week out, and he might just be getting those picks in opportunistic situations. I mean, for you, when you're scouting a defensive back, what's the biggest thing you look at to figure out which DB you're going to have to deal with the most?
For me, it's the guy that is technically sound, uses his hands, can move his hips, winds up in the right place at the right time. I think you hit it on the head there. Again, that's why I say guys have got to go back and do just a little bit of film work, because they may be throwing at you consistently and you end up with more picks than me. But they're throwing at you because they feel like they can do something over there on your side of the ball. They're not throwing at me. I'm always in coverage. I may not have any picks, but I've got 4 knockdowns, pass defenders, PBUs, however you want to label it. But you have 2 picks. Well, that's 2 more picks than I have, but then you also have been in the mix more than I have. Like you said, you have more touchdowns scored against you. You have more catches caught on you. Kind of like the Sauce Gardner effect. People just didn't fool with him after a while. But watching him play, he's always in the hip pocket of that guy. Okay, we may need to stay away from this guy. But if you don't watch film and you just solely look at the numbers, you would never know who Sauce Gardner was.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to the whole thing, like, who would you rather have? Would you rather have and I'm not saying neither one of these guys, both of these guys can ball. Would you rather have a Trevon Diggs or would you rather have a Sauce Gardner? For me, give me Sauce 10 times out of 10.
Every time.
That's the guy I want. And I also think it's let's be honest. I mean, I'm not saying this is a problem. How many people voting really understand like the coverage, like, because you know this, Coach, man, the coverages that have been developed now in college football are insane.
Yeah.
I mean, like the cover 7 and all these like man match coverages and everything. I mean, people, it's insane. Like people will like play Madden and be like, oh, you're running just a base cover 3 or a base cover 4 or a cover 1. It's like, man, these dudes will change the coverage based on where the wide receiver goes and switch on man coverage and then switch to a cover 3 on one side and the safety will do one thing. Like, it's insane.
Yep. It's all in the matter of a snap of a ball, a couple steps. I went from covering you to now I'm getting over the top of number one, that kind of thing. And it happens quick.
Man, I love it. Well, we'll have to get into like I've been thinking about it. I really want to do like a full like coverage breakdown with you like on the show, because I feel like, man, people know the basic coverages, because I think anyone who's ever played understands just like the basic coverages, but like some of the new developments in terms of like man match and the mixed coverages, man, I really think people would enjoy that in terms of like really understanding. I mean, of course, Saban, kind of the guy who like got that thing started, but then you got guys like Kirby and stuff that have added on. But coach, the second team offense, I think, we'll kind of hit these quickly. I think you see my guy Lyndon Rash on there. I've already said he should probably move up, but any surprises here at all?
Now this is where I think my guy should have made his mark at the receiver spot.
Agreed.
And then this is where also, even if you didn't put the kid from Alabama State on first, I think he should have been on this one as well. Again, it's just a lot of names that could have went on there, and we can say it all night. I just want to know what goes into selecting that.
And the critiques that we have could have been easy. You move Lyndon to first team. That's 3 guys. You got 2 spots, and Keyshawn and Monterio would be right there. It's simple. I mean, really, it would have been super simple. I don't have any issue with this, really and truly. I will say, I understand why Ahmad's on here, and this is no disrespect to him. There's an argument I can make for Caleb Johnson to get that spot over him from PV, if you're picking PV. And I also do think, even though we didn't have a great year, if we're going to take, if people like to say preseason are projections, all-purpose, I don't know. I don't think the SWAC has an all-purpose position, which is outrageous. You got to have all-purpose nowadays too. Nico Duffy should have been all-purpose second team.
And I think, a few years ago, he should have won it. He should have won the numbers that he put up a few seasons back. That goes into what you said as far as people just watching and understanding the game. But I think they do a all-purpose with the NFL as well now. So yeah, I think, and put it into the returner perspective, utility, however you want to list it. But I think you've got to do that as well when we're talking about the adding the positions. So I'm with you on that. SWAC office, get at me and B. We'll show you how to add those positions. Seamless transition.
It definitely is. And I mean, this second team all SWAC. I'll let you start, Coach. I have a few problems, but I'll let you go ahead and kick it off.
Again, like you said, it just kind of goes to what are we looking at, and it's no knock to any of these kids. And I know people always ask, well, why don't you call names? I don't call names because I don't want anybody putting, bulletin board material. But I don't know what goes into it. Again, I'm not knocking anybody, but there's things when we were just talking about the secondary. To me, if you are part of a secondary that gives up umpteen many yards every week, I don't know how you factor into that if you're not looking at film, so to speak, if that makes sense. You're giving up 400 yards passing. I'm not watching film. You have 2 interceptions, but you are part of that 400 yards that's going up, kind of thing. So I don't know what factors in. I just know that Andrew Smith should have been at one of those DB spots on either the first or second team. I feel biased, however you want to put it. But if you go back and you look, I think that, he did work. And again, when we finish, I'm going to point something out, and you'll be able to get in on it as well.
I mean, Again, linebacker would have been solved just moving Terrence Ellis to first team and having 4 linebackers. Just want to throw that out there. I will say, and this isn't, and listen, I get it that this team was upset, and this is probably the topic you're talking about with Jackson. Um, I do think the 2 defensive tackles should have been in there somewhere, whether it was first or second team. Devontae Davis has earned it. I mean, man, this kid has already been in all conference selection. And I think it goes back to what we're talking about with defensive backs coach, because we all know defensive tackles aren't going to pad the stat box. That's not their job. Because I used to play D tackle, but before I moved to offensive tackle, and the goal of the defensive tackle, unless you're a Nick Fairley, unless you're an Aaron Donald, a generational talent coming out of high school, your goal is to be big, take up blocks, and allow your linebackers to go do the things. As great as Aubrey Miller was, he can't do it alone.
If he's not taking double teams.
Thank you. Devontae Davis and Jeremiah Williams, in my opinion, are the 2 guys that should have been on here somehow, some way, but especially Devontae Davis. They were taking up double team blocks. They were still being able to make plays, but they were allowing Geronte Davis and Aubrey Miller to go eat. And I think they've been so underrated. Like, I'm sorry, like, and no offense to Michael Atkins, and I just want to say this. I mean, he's a great player, but bro, how are you on the worst rushing defense in the SWAC and being all conference defensive lineman? I help me. I don't know. And so it's no offense to them or anything like that, but you got 2 guys who were key pieces to the number 1 defense in the country last season, and you don't have them on all SWAC. And I just want to put this out here. Jeremiah Williams is like a top 5 graded defensive tackle in the entire country in FCS. And he's a younger guy, and I get it. But Devontae Davis, there's no excuse for this because it's kind of in the same boat as Bubba and Jarvian, where it just seems like year after year, Devontae Davis just gets disrespected. Because if you remember, that's a kid who was at Jackson before prime.
Yes.
He's waited his turn. Yeah, he's been good. He's been great. He's one of my favorite HBCU players. I've had him on the show, talked to him today. It's ridiculous that he keeps getting disrespected. Like, you got to put him on one of the 2 teams. He's on ours. That's cool. But man, the conference has to do better, because a guy who is a staple in the conference, who easily could have left after the first coaching change, definitely could have left after the second coaching change, is sticking with Jackson State, sticking in the conference. The conference owed him a little bit more than that.
Yeah, and that bleeds into what I was going to bring up as we're winding down, and you give me what you think, and maybe people can chime in. The last 2 years, these lists have been dominated by that team up the street. And I said then that I think a lot of the people that voted was starstruck with the coach, not looking at the player. And now that the coach is not there, you go back and you look, correct me if I'm wrong, there's a lot less kids from up the street on these lists now. Yep. And prime example, the kid you just talking about, done everything he was supposed to do. If said coach was still there, I gotta believe that kid would be on the list. Was it right when they were doing it? No, it wasn't right. You know, I think out of 20 spots, they had at least 15 of them or something crazy, maybe not that crazy, but there were some people on that list when said coach was there, like, come on, man, y'all just voting for that kid because of who the coach is and you're scared of blowback or whatever, you know, it may have been. But now there's a new coach and there's far less of said players on the list, man. Do you think that kind of goes together?
Here's what I think, and I talked to you about that today, and I think what happened is people, I mean, let's just be honest, coaches and other players, regardless if you want to call it hate or not, they're tired of Jackson State. It is what it is. I mean, I don't think anyone in the chat will disagree, even Jackson State fans. The rest of the SWAC is gone. It has Jackson in their crosshairs. They use this as a get back vote, in my opinion, where it was like all these players who we thought were being overlooked, we're going to get back at you by overlooking your players.
Okay.
That was that to me, that's what happened is these, because let's just know, if we know at least the voters are SIDs and coaches, they are saying this is preseason. At the end of the day, if we're wrong, we're wrong. Like, it's not like postseason where if you really messed it up, then like obviously like there's going to be some blowback. People are going to overlook it because it's preseason. It's not a big deal. They sent a message, and it was like, listen, over the past 2 years, we've had to look at all the Jackson on these lists, and we have felt that our players have been overlooked. Well, guess what? We're going to give them their spotlight now. I really do feel like that. And I mean, I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theorist or anything like that, but talking to coaches, talking to other players, I understand the sentiment. Like, I get it. And I think it's wrong. And I listen, I think Jackson should have had 20 selections in preseason? No. They lost a lot of their talent, but for me, I think there was 4 to 5 really good players that could have been on it that Jackson still has, and that's cool. But at the end of the day, for them to have just one, that's a little outrageous, man. That's a little bit suspicious.
Yeah, that's blatantly obvious. You know what I mean? To have just one. And again, like you said, they lost a lot of talent via transfer, graduation, whatever. But I just don't. You're just not going to make me believe that none of those kids that clocked minutes last year wasn't good enough to be on any of these teams.
Well,
and I'm definitely not fighting for them. Trust me, I'm not fighting for them. I'm just saying that, to me, goes back to what I said the last 2 years. Y'all were strictly voting for these kids because of who their coach was.
Yeah, I mean, and they really feel like that, regardless if it was true or not. And this is why I think you have to get coaches and SIDs off the voting panel. That's just crazy. And I agree with this. Like, D Davis was second team last season and doesn't get preseason. We haven't played a single snap, coach. What happened? Like, what did we do? And so I think that's ridiculous, man. I mean, it's all perception at the end of the day. And listen, when I look back, were there some sketchy picks over the past 2 years? Yeah, probably some guys that I might not personally agree with. But here's my disconnect. I want to get your opinion. This Jackson team that is supposedly going to finish second in the East only got one player on there. Alabama State's got a few. Alabama A&M. Hell, I did Valley. Maybe not Valley. Okay. Bethune had a first teamer. I mean, so at the end of the day, where's the disconnect? Are these players actually? Are there some good players on there? Or are we just voting second blindly? So it's like, it's literally the standings that they're voting, the predicted order of finish isn't even matching up with their all-conference teams. That's the issue for me. Like, listen, when you look at my all-conference team or my All-American team, guess who had the most? The national champions had the most. And everyone else who had a bunch of All-Americans were top 10 teams at the end of the day. Now, North Dakota State's the one team that has a disconnect because they lost a lot, but man, one is just crazy. And I mean, listen, for me, I already said Isaias, but he's not eligible, so let's leave him out of the conversation. I think me and you both think that kid's going to be on postseason.
Yeah,
I think we can agree. DJ Stevens was obvious at tight end. I think when you look at Devontae Davis at defensive tackle, there was a conversation that he could be first team, but at least second team. I think Jeremiah Williams should have been considered on defensive tackle as well. And then I think those were your 3 sure ones, if anything. Like, you should at least have 3. And I think the borderline guys for Jackson were Keverick Wiggins at defensive back, But with the SWAC only having 4 spots, I get why he didn't make it. If you expand it to 5 or 6, then he's definitely probably on it. So that's a different conversation. And then I think Evan Henry on offensive line should have got some consideration. There were some interesting offensive line picks on the second team. So you're looking at least 5. And then you even mentioned, I don't know if it was you or I was listening to someone else earlier. If we expand the wide receivers, then maybe throw one of them of them, whether it's Rico or whoever you want to, put in that conversation. And I think offensive line wise, if you're not including transfers, I get it. But the DeAndre Towns Blue kid, who was a JUCO All-American, man, that kid's going to be an all-conference player, in my opinion. So I think we're sitting at 3 to 5 minimum, but 1 just kind of disrespectful.
Obvious. Having 1 was just obvious.
Yeah.
Having 1 is just obvious.
It's just crazy. But I mean, man, at the end of the day, like we said, I mean, the all-conference teams, it is kind of what it is. But I think the biggest takeaway for me today is we got to get the voting right, whether that's changing up who votes, whether that's how we structure votes, or at the end of the day, just name SWAC Offensive Player of the Year, the SWAC Quarterback of the Year. We got to change something.
Totally agree. You got to fix it before you get to the postseason, just because I think this is going to be a great year of football. And I just think you got to make it right. And you got time to fix that. It's your conference. You can add what you want, if you want, add a 3rd team, just to make it right. I mean, you got to do that. But it just can't be, like you said, the quarterback award. If that's what it is, that's what it is. But don't name it just because the kid plays quarterback and the other kid plays receiver. He still did work. His numbers are what they are. And if you've got to have 1,000 yards as a receiver to be considered, and you only have 900, then let that be known. And then everybody can understand and be happy with the fact that, okay, cool, he didn't have enough yards to be considered for that, if that's what it is. But I think you got to let those things be known, man.
Yeah, and man, real quick before we get out of here, man, we can wrap this up. SWAC commissioner made some comments today about the SWAC championship, and then it's kind of started a conversation about the Celebration Bowl. You've played in the Celebration Bowl. Give me a percentage, just in your mind. How much of a advantage does the bye weeks give the MEAC?
I'll be honest with you, as a Coach B, and we've talked about it. You're never going to make excuses for that, but I think in some cases it benefits the other side, and we talked about that with this previous one. If they had to play in the same amount of time as the team up the street, the quarterback who ripped them apart probably not playing in that game because of the situation with his injury. I think it's a double edge. People say, well, they're rested, but they got to fight the rust. You guys are still in playing mode. To me, as a coach, we're practicing, so the rust is going to be up to us how much rust is there. And that's depending on what we do during practice, to me. If there's a way to level the time, I think you look into it. But if it's not, I mean, as a coach, you just tee it up and you go. But there is an advantage to be able to go back and break down 10 games, plus your most recent, and you trying to get as many as you can in a matter of 2 weeks. There is a difference. Not making an excuse, but there is a football difference, because now I can track what you've done up to the beginning, all the way to the end, to see exactly what you stay consistent with, as compared to where I got to take your last 3 and I got to get it broke down in a hurry, card it up, and get my kids looking at it. When you got a whole month to look at everything, plus see us live.
I mean, I feel you on that. I mean, for me, is there an advantage? Probably a little bit, but at the end of the day, here's my issue with it, and I think someone said in the chat earlier too, and I've been on this side for a while. It's the SWAC's fault. At the end of the day, the SWAC chose this path. We want to keep expanding and have 12 teams. We want to have a conference championship that's played 2 weeks after the season ends. At the end of the day, like, this is the problem with the SWAC, is like, you created the problem that you're complaining about at the end of the day, because Grambling and Southern are never going to move. We talked about this last episode. Grambling and Southern are never going to move the Bayou Classic. Alabama State's never going to move the Turkey Day Classic. You are the problem, not the MEAC, because the SWAC is the only conference with a conference championship game. You created the issue. So at the end of the day, either fix your issues and give up the money of the SWAC championship game, or you got to get over it. At the end of the day, like, eventually, as much as the extra weeks an advantage, you would think that they would learn how to overcome that. Like, bro, we are what? This will be how many Celebration Bowls? It will be like the 8th Celebration Bowl next year, 6, something like that.
Yeah, I think it's 8.
Yeah. At the end of the day, like, you figure it out. Like, we've had 8 go arounds. Like something's got to change, and it's just. And I do agree with someone in the chat. If the MEAC SWAC challenge wasn't so lopsided as well, I think you could make the argument that it's mainly just a break. But the fact that you're also getting beat up in the SWAC MEAC challenge consistently, at the end of the day, man, it's hard to say that it's just a break, even though it does offer a small advantage.
But I mean, and even at that, like I said, as a coach, man, other than one that got out of hand, every one of those games have been close. Yeah. You know, every one of those games have been close. Except for the one, like I said, that got out of hand. But other than that, you know, to me, it's a slight advantage, but it's nothing to just throw the whole thing away about, you know, for. This year we will figure it out, and you know, we'll talk about it and laugh about it later.
Yeah, it's becoming, I don't know about you, it's becoming one of those conversations. And for me, I have a few that just aggravate me beyond, like, I'm done talking about them. The SWAC in the playoffs. Don't bring it up to me. I don't care. I don't want to talk about it. We know what it is. The Celebration Bowl. I don't want to talk about it anymore. It's great. Let's leave it where it is. Let's end the conversation. Stop talking to me about it. Like, and this is becoming one of them where it's just like the break. Why don't the MEAC have a conference championship game? We just talked about it. They got 6 teams. You can't have a conference championship with 6 teams. That's a third of your conference going to the championship. That's ridiculous. Everyone plays each other. There's no reason for it. That's dumb. So unless the MEAC expands, that's a moot point.
Yeah.
The SWAC wants the money of the SWAC championship. Amazing. Get that money, because at the end of the day, it goes to a good cause. I love it. It helps build the conference. All this stuff has been around longer than the Celebration Bowl. But if that's the path you chose, then stop talking about it. If it was really bothering the SWAC deep down in their core, the blueprints there on how to fix it. So unless you're willing to give up some money, give up an ESPN2 game, whatever you want to say, stop complaining. Just stop complaining. Like, it's just gotten ridiculous and out of hand at this point. Like, just stop talking about it. The break helps, but you're the reason the break exists.
Yeah, waiting on us, so to speak. I get it. I'm with it.
It's just crazy. We're gonna have like a blacklist of topics for the Coaches Corner, and that's going right there under the FCS playoffs in the SWAC. It's just, and
with the playoffs, the casual, the regular fan don't understand the bottom line with that and why that's just, you know, it's tough. to even want to get into it. You know what I mean? It's just so many underlying things that bring out already existing problems. And that conversation would spin into a whole nother conversation that would go into a whole nother conversation. And you forget that we were here talking about the playoffs, but now this is why. And it's all in black and white, you know. But, you know, if you're just the regular fan or whatever, you're not on the inside of it, you don't understand that how that seating works, how that money works, you know, all of that, you know, plays a factor. And I would be very surprised. Yeah, we're not having that conversation anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, man, I've been there. Listen, everything's great the way it is. But I think everything's good the way it is, man. Love it. And now I will say this: if the MEAC goes and adds some teams, in any form, whether it's bringing up some D2 teams, whether Tennessee State decides to shockingly join the MEAC, whatever that may be, if they can get up to 8 teams, 9 teams again, then we change the conversation. You can possibly have a conference championship. That's fine. But until they get past 6 teams, there's no reason. It's a waste of money. It's a waste of time. And I agree with Trey Oliver. Coach, would you have been excited to watch Howard and Central play 3 weeks after Central just put 50 on them?
What was going to change that outcome?
Nothing. And look, it was the same thing I said with Southern and Jackson. I was not excited for that. I would have rather seen them play PV. At the end of the day, or the only time I'm for a rematch, like let's say Howard and Central played and it was like a 3-point game, I would sign me up for that. That would be an amazing game. But man, who wants to go watch a blowout happen again?
Yeah, when you kind of know, and you got to be in it to win it, no doubt about it. But some of them, like we talked about, you know, that kind of thing. So,
man,
it is what it is, bro.
Man, Coach, this was a blast, man. I'm glad we got to move this to Tuesday night, man. Chilling in the hotel. We ain't got nothing better to do, man. I appreciate everyone that tuned in. I know everyone was live, man. I saw the numbers keep going up throughout the show, man, as more people started hopping off live. Listen, SWAC Media Day content is coming all day tomorrow, man. We already dropped 5 coaches interviews. We got coaches interview, player interviews. Stay tuned, man. Turn your post notifications on, man, because the content is flowing starting at about 9 a.m. tomorrow.
Before you get off, can you tip your hand on who won the best dress? That's always a topic.
Oh.
Don't tip that. Don't tip that.
No, I can tip it. I mean, okay. I think everyone kind of already saw. I will say this. I'm going to give an honorable mention. The colors made no damn sense. The colors were stupid. But Valley was kind of clean in the blue, even though they did. I don't know where they pulled the blue suits out from.
Okay.
Well, where the hell did they grab that from? But the blue suits were clean, bro. I really liked the blue suits, but when they were walking in, I was like, is that Southern? I was like, nope, that's not Dooley. I was like, that is Kendrick Wade with not a blue suit, with a gray suit, and his players are decked out in blue. I don't know where they got. Listen. I'm gonna text my guy Coach Anderson after the show and be like, "Who picked the blue suits out?" I don't know where they came from, but they were clean, Coach. I'll give you that. And I think after that, I'm gonna say, listen, PV has some really nice suits.
Okay, I didn't see them. Okay.
Yeah, PV was clean, and the 2 Southern players were clean. Dooley did his thing. You know how it is with Dooley, man. He's gonna have the insane outfit, but the 2 Southern players, especially Jalen Campbell, man, clean. I think those 2 players, and I think the Valley players and the Southern players, man, really did their thing.
Yeah, I need the breaking news on what the blue connection was.
Look, I'm gonna bring that next live stream. I don't know if I gotta call Coach Anderson and get him on the stream, but I'm gonna need an answer on that one.
What's the connection? How do we?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. Like, I know a lot of people weren't a fan of Dooley's outfit.
Yeah, I saw that.
The chat's going crazy right now. I mean, they're not a fan. I'm not even trying to pull up those comments. Definitely not a fan of the Gucci suit, or Gia called it a Gucci rug. So, oh my God, man, this is. Oh, but y'all are wrong. Like, I had comments on my video, my interview I posted with them, that people didn't want to watch it because they couldn't look at the suit long enough. Coach, it was a 3-minute interview, a 3-minute and like 30-second interview, and they couldn't get through it, man. It's just outrageous. But no, I got to say the Valley suits were clean, but I still, maybe they just wanted to be different, because I mean, let's be honest, even Southern went rocking the blue suits.
I mean, I'm cool with that, but if you wear your blue suit and I wear another suit, cool. That's the suit you had, but we both showed up in blue suits with black bow ties. There's something that we don't know that y'all know. I just want to know, because you're green, white, and red. I just want to know what the connection is to that blue. That's all.
At least Maynard did rock. Maynard rocked the maroon suit, shockingly. So I will tell you the funniest thing that happened today, just to kind of give some insight on this, is Maynard was coming off the HBCU game day interview, and him and Eddie Rob were going back and forth, and Maynard was like, "Man, I'm gonna hop off here, man, hit you with the elbow, put you in the figure 4 leg lock," and man, they were kind of going back and forth, man, chirping, and man, it's, you know how Maynard is, man. He won't stop. It's just
I hope
ridiculous.
somebody got that on tape.
I think someone did. I didn't have my camera on me because I was taking Maynard to my interview when they were talking. I should have had my camera on me. And then also, someone said he was real popular today. Man, you could tell he was tired of interviews. So that was his second to last interview, and he yelled in the main room. He was like, "Man, can someone tell Prime to come back, man? Take all this attention off of me." He was like, "Man, someone go get Prime."
He's still firing shots.
Oh, but listen, I'm sorry. I will say Connell Maynard might be, I mean, he's probably one of the funniest coaches in the SWAC, but man, Trey Oliver's giving him a real run for his money.
Hands down.
In HBCU football.
Yeah. It's neck and neck. It's
SWAC,
he's got that.
I will say though, the difference between the MEAC and SWAC is the old, like Buddy Pugh, I don't think he means to be funny, but that dude is hilarious. Like, he's almost like unintentionally funny, where like he thinks he's just chilling, and he always has that big smile on his face, like the grandfather that like doesn't know what he's doing, and everyone is just laughing. I was talking to some of the players, man, and he'll just make you laugh doing nothing. It's like the weirdest connection. But some of the older coaches in the SWAC, man, it's like talking to, man, I can interview this lamp sometimes better. They don't give you anything. Like, they're just like no energy, man. It's just crazy, man. We'll have to talk about that off the show, man, so I don't burn any bridges with that one. But there were some interesting interviews, man. Hugh's pretty good, but I think Connell Maynard, out of all the coaches, takes the cake for the most entertaining coach, and I think Trey Oliver has it by a mile in the MEAC.
I'm with it.
Man. But guys, man, make sure to tune into all the SWAC Media Day content, man. SoCom Media Day content for those who are going to tune into that, or just FCS fans, man. Coming Thursday night, Friday. And I'm going to try to get some content from the SWAC MEAC press conference, man, tomorrow in Atlanta, man. So stay tuned for that as well. But guys, for Coach Fred, for myself, and for the Bluebloods, man, we'll be back next Wednesday. But for right now, man, we out.